Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. We are just waiting for as folks continue to join the webinar, and we'll get started in a couple minutes. All right, everyone, we are going to get started. Again, good afternoon. I'm David Glasser. I'm the superintendent of Shaker Heights City School District. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. This afternoon, we have a couple of brief updates, relatively brief and maybe a little fewer updates than we've had in past webinars. We did want to make sure we provided some updates before spring break. And we will have another webinar, of course, after spring break. So I will share some of these updates, and then as we have done in the past, we will open up the chat function so that folks can ask questions or share any other comments they would like to for us to be able to respond. So you've probably seen this slide before, but again, this is kind of just a refresher on our timeline that we're operating under as we prepare for the transitions that are taking place before next school year, including fifth grade students staying at the elementary buildings and sixth grade students moving to the middle school site. As I've said in the past, we remain on schedule with this timeline. We have shared staffing decisions with our certified staff members, with our teachers, a couple of weeks ago. We expect to be able to share staffing assignments with our classified employees, with our non-teachers, in the coming days. So we remain on track. We are also in the process of actually launching professional learning and collaborative planning time and other supports to help prepare staff and faculty for next year. So that is really starting to take place more or less as we speak. And there are a couple of other items on here which I'll be updating folks about in the course of this webinar. So just a couple of different topics that I wanted to update everyone on. In terms, I'll start with the Ludlow Preschool Project. As I think most folks are aware, this isn't technically, the Ludlow renovation project isn't technically a part of the OFCC, the Ohio Facility Construction Commission Master Facilities Plan, but it is a project that we are already embarking on. We do have an architect and construction firm selected, GPD and the Gobain construction firm, respectively. We are in the process of developing schematic designs that we expect to be able to share with the community at large, most likely within the next 4 to 8 weeks. So far, what we've seen looks excellent. I know some questions that we have gotten. The field space that currently exists at Ludlow, we expect to remain at Ludlow. So I know we've gotten questions about whether the softball field and the soccer field that are currently part of the field space there will be maintained in its current form or size. And the answer to that question is at this point, yes. We do have to expand the parking lot a little bit, but we're really just taking up some additional buffer space between the parking lot and the field space, really just so we can make sure we have enough space for pickup and drop off for preschool students. Otherwise, like I said, the Ludlow project continues to move on schedule, and we continue to remain on schedule for opening the Ludlow site for an expanded pre-K program in the 25-26, at the beginning of the 25-26 school year. Last week, we also met with the City Planning Commission and received conditional approval for the installation of modular units at the middle school site. Those modular units will help to house or accommodate the additional students who will be at the middle school site. We have not yet determined exactly how the modular units will be used or who they will be used for. That is something that we are working on and expect to have information on within the next couple of weeks. The reason the approval was conditional, the City Planning Commission did ask us to present an alternate plan for the landscaping installation, the trees and the shrubs that we need to install related to the modular unit installation. So we will make those adjustments. We also need approval from City Council. I believe the City Council meeting is taking place on March 25th, if I'm not mistaken. And we are moving ahead with the modular units. The other question that we've gotten related to the modular units is just how long we plan to have the modular units on the middle school site. We have signed a 2-year contract or a 2-year lease for the modular units because right now we know for certain that we will need those modular units while 6th graders are at the middle school and while Woodbury is being renovated. We are not yet sure if we will need the modular units once the middle school site is being used for elementary school swing space. We can extend the lease if we need to at a later date. I mentioned this at yesterday's board meeting, but I'll reiterate it here. I do not want to unintentionally send any kind of message related to guaranteeing that the Woodbury renovation will be complete in 2 years. We don't know if that's the case. Right now, though, we know for certain that we will need the modular units for at least 2 years. So that's where we stand with the modular units in the middle school site. We are in the process of looking for an architecture firm and a construction firm for the OFCC Master Facilities Plan for the rest of the renovations that we'll be undertaking. We have received submissions from architecture firms in response to the request for qualifications that we published. The construction firm request for qualification document is still live, and it closes, I believe, this Friday. Just a couple of notes about both of those kind of concurrent search processes. We will be over the coming weeks, we will be taking the applicants from the architecture submissions and creating a short list. There are certain criteria that we have to review and score proposals on. Once we have developed that short list, architecture firms will submit a proposal that will include pricing estimates. For the construction firm search process, that RFQ is still open. So we have not yet received any submissions, or we've not completed the submissions for that process. We did, over the past week, we did add an addendum to the RFQ for the construction firm. That addendum highlights and underscores the district's commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and specifies some things that we are looking for from construction firms in their responses to the RFQ. All eligible firms did receive that notification, just like they received the original RFQ bulletin. So those are some of the updates related to the architect and construction firm. We have said in the past, and we remain on schedule to complete this, that we expect to have an architecture firm selected by the end of April and a construction firm selected by the end of May. We are working on identifying some community stakeholders and other internal stakeholders who will be a part of that interview and selection process. At yesterday's board meeting, the last 2 items on the slide kind of go hand in hand. At yesterday's board meeting, we shared with the Board of Education some proposed calendar adjustments. These calendar adjustments are being made or are being proposed so that we can accommodate time needed for packing, moving, and unpacking, while also prioritizing student instructional time. So briefly, the proposed calendar adjustments include for students in K through 8 buildings, that they would end school a day early this year. So instead of ending school on June 6th, they would end school on June 5th. At the beginning of next school year, we are proposing that staff and faculty report a day early. So staff and faculty would report on August 15th instead of August 16th. The student start date would remain the same. We are also proposing that next year's calendar ends a day early. So on June 4th instead of June 5th. And the reason for that is because of that additional day that we're adding, we have to take that from a day that's currently in the calendar as January 6th. So we will be adding or proposing that we add a student day on January 6th. There are a lot of details related to the proposed calendar adjustments. If you are interested in learning more, I encourage you to look at the board agenda from yesterday evening. We will be communicating these proposed calendar adjustments widely so that families can prepare accordingly. And we expect the board to vote on the calendar adjustments in order to adopt these proposed calendar adjustments at the April 16th board meeting. Somewhat relatedly, we are moving forward with the many plans and details to undergo the moves that are taking place. Obviously, the primary move that we're focused on is all the staff and faculty who will be moving out of Woodbury into other spaces. There are also some other related moves that are taking place in buildings, in our K-5 buildings and in our middle school, kind of in response to the Woodbury staff and faculty and students joining those buildings. We also know that there are some areas that are maybe kind of more intensive moving needs. So like art, music, science, library, those are areas that we're also focusing on. We are very close to finalizing an agreement with a moving company, which we're very excited about. And that having a moving company in place will help us really start taking the next steps as it relates to planning for the move. We do have an internal committee made up of a wide range and representative group of staff and faculty members that is also helping to plan for this upcoming move process. So that again, that project or those plans are moving forward. Those are really the main updates I wanted to share with everybody today. Just a couple of reminders. We do have an information night for rising grade 5 families on March 18th at 6 p.m. Definitely encourage families to join. We will be resuming these webinars after spring break, so the next webinar is planned for April 2nd. With that, we are opening up the chat, and I believe one of our communications team members, Kristen Cash, will be joining me to help just moderate and facilitate the questions and chats as they come in. Again, thank you everybody for joining. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you, Dr. Glasner. Can you talk a little bit about, besides the moving company, the support that the moving company will provide, what supports might be available for staff and faculty as they prepare for the move?
Sure. Well, I guess a couple of things I want to mention. First of all, I mentioned that we kind of are initiating or launching professional learning, collaborative planning time, so that staff can prepare for next year. As part of preparing for next year, for some staff members, that is also kind of reviewing, learning about and reviewing curriculum, lesson planning, and other programmatic planning that is taking place for next year, which will have an impact on what staff chooses to bring with them in their new learning spaces. Beyond the planning components, just in terms of the moving aspects, we are already in conversations with moving company and our potential moving company and other providers to provide opportunities for staff to already begin thinking about what they might be keeping or not keeping with the move. So, for example, we're working on having some secure bins installed at Woodbury for staff who are starting to look through all the different paperwork that might exist at Woodbury and other documentation and things that need to be disposed of securely. We can start that process kind of on an ongoing basis instead of waiting till the end of the year. We are also providing staff with optional times to start packing or going through materials starting in the month of May. In terms of other supports, we are having regular, the team meetings and the staff meetings that take place regularly are continuing to make sure that staff is getting the support that they need. I also want to acknowledge both the Shaker Schools Foundation and our PTO. Both have been very helpful in thinking through what kinds of supports might be helpful as staff go through the moving process. Shaker Schools Foundation is helping to plan for a celebration of Woodbury's legacy, as well as celebration of what the future holds. That's taking place on May 17th, Friday afternoon. Some staff members and alumni have been a part of that planning process. We're very excited about the opportunity to be able to celebrate all that Woodbury means for our school community. The PTO has also started working, the Woodbury PTO and the middle school PTO have already started conversations about kind of merging and how they can support both the moving process as well as the transition more holistically. I know this came up at yesterday's board meeting. The PTO has brought up the idea of, how could they help provide support, both moral support, but also moving support. That's something that we really appreciate and we're looking into. And we expect to have more information about how folks may be able to volunteer to help provide support as this process unfolds in the near future.
Great, thank you. We have a question here about transportation for the middle school. Will there be students, for instance, who live close enough to the school, will they be able to walk, or will all students be bused, or do we not have that answer yet?
We don't have that definitive answer yet. I will say though, just like there are 7th and 8th grade students at the middle school site who currently walk to the middle school if they're within the walking radius. If there are 6th graders next year who live within that walking radius, I would expect that they will likely walk as well. Generally speaking though, we are still in the process of developing transportation routes for next year. So we have not shared, nor do we have yet specific routing information for specific students and families at this point.
Okay, and along those lines, a second question came in while you were talking. Can you confirm that there is a crossing guard at the middle school?
I'm hesitating because I can't remember which intersection we have crossing guards at. I know the city is typically responsible for crossing guards, and if I'm not mistaken, I think we have one. I want to say it's South Woodland and Warrensville, but don't quote me on that.
I believe my colleague here is saying that it's at Warrensville and Shaker.
Warrensville and Shaker. Okay, that could be the case. So I know we have had a crossing guard in the past, and we will make sure to keep looking into that. Again, that's something the city helps us with. But we'll make sure that remains a priority as we move forward to next year.
Okay. So there's a question about landscaping at the modular units. Will there be any kind of fencing, or will it just be the landscaping around the modular units?
I believe it's just the landscape. I don't have the designs in front of me. We are required by ordinance and by code to have a buffer between the modular units and the street. And so the bushes that I referred to earlier help provide that. I believe that's it. I don't believe there is fencing currently included in the modular unit plans.
And you mentioned the calendar process and how it is going through the approval process. Can you talk a little bit about what the lag is on that and why there's a lag between the proposed calendar and the approved calendar?
Sure, great question. So we are required by law to have a 30-day window between the time we propose a calendar adjustment to the board and the time the board votes on that calendar that proposed calendar. That happens all the time. Whenever we propose a new academic calendar, we always have that 30-day window. It's probably not as noticeable because it's usually talking about a calendar that's a little farther out. But we always make sure to have that 30-day window included in the proposal and approval process. That said, we do typically, and certainly in this case, try to get as much feedback about the proposed calendar changes before we provide those proposed calendar changes to the board. And typically the board does vote to approve the proposals that we provide. In the case of the proposed adjustments that I brought up a couple minutes ago, we have reviewed those proposed changes with a number of different employees, including all of our collective bargaining unit leaders. We have reviewed this with the Facilities Advisory Committee, with our PTO leaders, and our calendar committee, and our Finance and Audit Committee. So we have gone through a feedback process already up until now. And this proposed calendar does reflect the feedback that we've received. So our hope is that the board will vote to approve these the proposed calendar changes at the April 16th meeting. Given how close that is to the end of the school year, we will be communicating to our families that these changes have been proposed and essentially expected to be implemented so that families can prepare accordingly. But that is a process that we are required to go through.
Thank you for that. And we will be sharing that very shortly with families. But if anyone is interested in watching, the proposed calendars are available at shaker.org/board live, along with a link to the feedback form to give public comment to the board meeting for April. So just wanted to let everybody know that that's available on our website.
Yeah, and I should add the rationale for having that 30-day window is so that there's an opportunity for community members to provide feedback if they have. Again, we try to do our homework before presenting those proposed calendar changes and get feedback in advance. But if there are folks who have feedback, there is an opportunity to do so.
Okay, so I think that's it for the questions, unless anyone wants to slide one in here at the very end. But we are all through the questions in the chat.
Well, I know this is a shorter webinar than we've had in the past. That's just where we are in the process. We have fewer updates maybe than we've had in the past. But again, thank you everybody for joining. I hope you have a wonderful spring break and look forward to seeing you on April 2nd. Have a great day, everybody.